In 1453, the last Roman emperor disappeared during the final fighting in Constantinople. This is the file on how the Byzantine Empire, Rome's eastern heir, endured for centuries and then fell to a rising Ottoman state. The story begins with Byzantium, a Greek colony founded long before the medieval empire. Its position on the Bosporus made it a gateway between the Black Sea, the Mediterranean, Europe, and Asia. That geography made it strategically valuable. Its harbor guarded one of the most important crossings in the ancient world. Whoever held that waterway could tax trade, move fleets, and watch traffic between two continents. The site rewarded whoever could defend it. In the 4th century, Emperor Constantine saw what Byzantium could become. He needed a capital closer to wealthy eastern provinces, active frontiers, and the roads of imperial power. The old city of Rome no longer fit every imperial need. In 330 AD, the rebuilt city was dedicated as Constantinople. It was tied to Roman authority from the beginning, not created as a separate kingdom outside the empire. The new capital was Roman by design. The eastern provinces were richer, more urban, and closer to the empire's strategic heart. Egypt, Syria, and Anatolia helped feed, tax, and defend the Roman state. That eastern base gave Constantinople real strength. Constantinople stood behind water on 3 sides, with natural defenses that most capitals could only envy. The Golden Horn, the Bosporus, and the Sea of Marmara made siege warfare difficult. Geography worked like a shield. The land side gained walls that became legendary. Under Theodosius II, towers, a moat, and layered defenses turned Constantinople into one of the hardest cities on earth to capture. The walls shaped the empire's survival. When the Western Roman Empire lost its last emperor in 476, the Eastern Empire did not fall. In Constantinople, Roman government, Roman law, and Roman imperial identity continued. For the East, Rome still existed. Modern historians call it Byzantine, but its people usually called themselves Romans. Greek became the dominant language, Christianity shaped public life, and Roman law remained central. The empire changed without abandoning its Roman claim. Byzantium was not a leftover fragment waiting to disappear. It had tax offices, courts, diplomats, arsenals, professional soldiers, and a capital built to outlast crisis. Survival required institutions, not only walls. The emperor was more than a political ruler. Palace ceremony, church ritual, legal authority, and military command all made him the visible center of a sacred Christian empire. Power was performed as well as enforced. In 527, Justinian became emperor and aimed to restore Roman greatness. He inherited resources, ambition, and advisors willing to turn imperial memory into active policy. His reign became a golden age with a high price. Justinian's generals Belisarius and Narses reconquered Vandal North Africa and much of Italy. Carthage, Ravenna, and Rome itself returned under imperial control for a time. The old Mediterranean Empire briefly seemed possible again. The victories were real, but they came at enormous cost. Long wars devastated Italy, drained the treasury, and pulled soldiers away from frontiers that still needed protection. Restoration weakened the state it was meant to glorify. Justinian also ordered the great codification of Roman law. The Corpus Juris Civilis gathered imperial decisions, jurists' writings, and legal teaching into a foundation for later Europe. Its influence outlived the empire itself. In 532, the Nika riots nearly destroyed Justinian's rule. What began around chariot factions became a violent uprising, and imperial troops killed thousands to restore control. The capital survived through force. From that crisis rose Hagia Sophia. Completed in 537, the cathedral became the empire's greatest architectural statement and the spiritual heart of Constantinople. It turned recovery into stone, marble, and light. Its vast dome seemed to float over marble, gold, and shadow. To visitors and ambassadors, Hagia Sophia made Byzantine power feel ancient, Christian, and almost cosmic. Architecture became imperial propaganda. Then plague struck. Beginning in 541, the Justinianic plague killed on a massive scale and weakened the empire's tax base, labor force, armies, and cities. The Golden Age carried a demographic shock. The empire also fought long wars against Sasanian Persia. Those wars exhausted both great powers, just before a new force emerged from Arabia and changed the region. Victory over Persia did not bring lasting security. From the 7th century, Arab Muslim armies took Syria, Palestine, Egypt, and eventually North Africa. Byzantium survived, but it lost some of its richest provinces with shocking speed. The empire became smaller and more defensive. Egypt's loss was especially severe. Without it, Constantinople lost grain, tax revenue, and strategic depth that had supported Roman power across the eastern Mediterranean. The old imperial economy could not simply continue. Constantinople survived major Arab sieges in the 7th and 8th centuries. The city, the walls, and Byzantine sea power kept the imperial core alive. The capital remained the empire's decisive fortress. Byzantine forces used a feared incendiary weapon later called Greek fire. Its exact formula remains uncertain, but its battlefield reputation became part of Constantinople's defense. At sea, it could terrify attackers. The empire adapted by becoming smaller, harder, and more militarized. Anatolia became the defensive heartland, organized around regional armies, forts, and local military obligations. The state survived by changing shape. Religious conflict also shook the state. During iconoclasm, emperors and churchmen fought over whether sacred images should be venerated, restricted, or destroyed. Theology became a political battlefield. The icon controversy lasted through much of the 8th and 9th centuries. It divided society and politics, but the empire endured and eventually restored icon veneration. The church emerged scarred but resilient. Byzantium's gold coin, the solidus, and later numisma, stayed trusted for centuries. Stable money helped support trade, diplomacy, military pay, and imperial prestige abroad. Currency became another form of power. Constantinople remained a city of merchants, monks, officials, soldiers, and foreign envoys. Silk, spices, grain, relics, and intelligence all moved through its streets. The capital was a marketplace of empire. Byzantine culture mixed Roman administration, Greek language, and Orthodox Christianity. Its mosaics, liturgy, manuscripts, and law carried influence far beyond imperial borders. Culture traveled even where armies could not. The empire helped transmit ancient Greek learning through copying and teaching. Monasteries, schools, and scholars preserved texts that later mattered to Islamic, Slavic, and Western European worlds. Memory became part of its legacy. In the 9th and 10th centuries, Byzantium recovered strength. The Macedonian dynasty expanded frontiers, reformed administration, and restored confidence after centuries of defensive struggle. The empire proved it could still rebound. Byzantine armies pushed back in the Balkans and the East. Emperors regained parts of Syria, Armenia, and other long-contested borderlands through war and diplomacy. The frontier moved outward again. Basil II, who ruled until 1025, crushed the Bulgarian Empire after decades of war. His reign marked one of Byzantium's last great military peaks. The empire looked formidable again. But victory hid structural danger. Powerful landowners were expanding, small soldier farmers were weakening, and the army's old recruitment base was under pressure. The system that defended Anatolia was eroding. After Basil II, emperors changed quickly and court politics grew unstable. The empire still looked rich, but its military foundations were less secure than they appeared. The next crisis would expose that weakness. In 1054, the Great Schism deepened the break between Constantinople and Rome. Disputes over authority, theology, and ritual hardened into separate Orthodox and Catholic worlds. The Christian map was changing. The schism did not instantly end diplomacy between East and West. But it made help harder, suspicion deeper, and religious politics more combustible. Future alliances would carry old mistrust. Meanwhile, Seljuk Turks moved into the eastern frontier zones. Their mounted forces changed the balance in Anatolia, the empire's most important recruiting and tax base. The threat was military and demographic. Emperor Romanos IV Diogenes tried to stop the danger. In 1071, he marched east to confront the Seljuk Sultan Alp Arslan near Manzikert. The campaign carried enormous stakes. At Manzikert, the Byzantine army was defeated and Romanos was captured. The battle became one of the great military disasters of Byzantine history. Its political aftermath was even worse. The defeat alone did not erase Anatolia. The deeper catastrophe came after Manzikert, when civil war and rival claimants shattered imperial control. Internal conflict opened the door wider. Turkish groups spread across Anatolia as Byzantine authority collapsed inland. The empire lost land, tax revenue, soldiers, and the strategic depth that had protected Constantinople. The heartland was slipping away. By the 1080s, the situation was desperate. Emperor Alexios I Komnenos faced Turks in Anatolia, Normans in the west, and a treasury under strain. Byzantium needed outside help. Alexios asked the Western Church for military help. Pope Urban II answered at Clermont in 1095, and the movement that became the First Crusade began. Byzantium had invited a dangerous solution. The First Crusade captured Jerusalem in 1099 and helped Byzantium recover parts of western Anatolia. Cooperation existed, but Crusader goals and Byzantine goals never fully matched. Alliance came with suspicion. Italian maritime powers gained trading privileges inside the empire. Venice, Genoa, and Pisa became useful partners, but also powerful competitors in Byzantine commerce. Commercial dependency grew over time. The Komnenian emperors restored military strength for a time. But the recovery depended on strong rulers, heavy diplomacy, foreign alliances, and constant pressure on limited resources. It was real, but fragile. In 1176, Byzantium suffered a major defeat against the Seljuks at Myriokephalon. The battle ended realistic hopes of fully restoring imperial control over Anatolia. The east would not be rebuilt. After Manuel I died in 1180, instability returned. Court coups, anti-Latin violence, foreign pressure, and provincial revolts weakened the empire from within. The recovery had depended too much on one dynasty. The Fourth Crusade began as a campaign meant for the eastern Mediterranean. Debt, Venetian strategy, and Byzantine dynastic politics diverted it toward Constantinople. The result was a catastrophe for Christendom's eastern capital. In April 1204, Crusaders stormed Constantinople. For 3 days, they looted churches, palaces, relics, libraries, and treasures from the greatest Christian city in the east. The damage was material and symbolic. The sack of 1204 was a wound Byzantium never fully healed. It destroyed wealth, trust, administrative continuity, and the aura of the invincible capital. The empire's center had been violated. Crusaders created the Latin Empire in Constantinople. Greek successor states formed in Nicaea, Epirus, and Trebizond, each claiming pieces of the Roman inheritance. The empire had fractured into competing shadows. The Empire of Nicaea preserved the strongest Byzantine line. In 1261, Michael VIII Palaiologos recovered Constantinople and restored the imperial court. The restoration was real, but incomplete. But the restored empire was a shadow of the old one. Constantinople was poorer, depopulated, and surrounded by rivals that had grown during the occupation. Its walls outlasted its resources. The Palaiologan emperors faced impossible arithmetic. They needed armies, ships, and repairs, but had fewer provinces, less revenue, and deeper dependence on foreign merchants. Prestige could not pay soldiers. In the 14th century, civil wars and plague damaged the empire further. The Black Death reduced populations across the region and weakened already fragile states. Byzantium had little margin left. Serbian, Bulgarian, and Turkish powers competed around the shrinking empire. Byzantium increasingly survived by diplomacy, marriage alliances, tribute, and appeals for Western help. Independence became more limited each decade. The Ottomans rose on the frontier of northwestern Anatolia. Under Osman and his successors, a small beylik became a disciplined expanding power. Their rise transformed Byzantium's final centuries. Bursa fell to the Ottomans in 1326 and became an early capital. Ottoman pressure now stood close to the Byzantine heartland. The new power was no longer distant. In the 1350s, the Ottomans crossed into Europe through Gallipoli. That foothold let them expand through the Balkans while Constantinople became increasingly isolated. The empire was nearly surrounded. By the late 14th century, Byzantine emperors often acted as Ottoman vassals. The empire still had a Roman name, but little independent power. Its diplomacy was survival management. Bayezid I besieged Constantinople, but Timur's victory over him at Ankara in 1402 gave Byzantium a temporary reprieve. The rescue came from Ottoman crisis, not Byzantine recovery. Time was bought, not strength. In 1451, Mehmed II became Ottoman Sultan and focused on Constantinople. The next year, he built Rumeli Hizari to control traffic through the Bosporus. The city was being sealed. The final siege began in April 1453. Mehmed brought a large army, a fleet, and huge cannons that could batter walls built for an older age. Gunpowder changed the equation. The defenders stretched a heavy chain across the Golden Horn to block Ottoman ships. Mehmed answered by moving vessels overland into the harbor. The blockade tightened from both land and sea. For weeks, cannon fire smashed the Theodosian walls and opened breaches near the landward defenses. The defenders repaired at night, but they were outnumbered and exhausted. The walls were finally failing. On May 29, 1453, Ottoman troops entered the city, and Emperor Constantine XI died fighting near the walls. Constantinople became the Ottoman capital, but Byzantine law, faith, art, and memory survived. Subscribe to the Fall Files for the next case.